Today is January 31st, 2017. And on this day, exactly 1 year ago, I participated in my first ayahuasca ceremony in Peru, in the Peruvian Amazon. So I want to talk about that because I haven't really discussed that experience much at all. I've discussed it with people in person, but not really on videos or on my website. I've kept it relatively private. I've shared some information and most people know I participated in it, but I really wanted to assimilate a lot of it and integrate the whole experience and gain some perspective before really talking about it in detail. And for those who don't really know about it, ayahuasca is this plant brew. And it consists of DMT, which is dimethyltryptamine. Dimethyltryptamine is what gets released through our pineal gland when we dream, and it's speculated that it gets released at birth and at death as well. And it creates these kind of visionary states of consciousness, essentially. And ayahuasca is the way it's brewed, it makes it so DMT is orally active because DMT typically is not orally active. It gets broken down in the gut. So people in the Amazon thousands of years ago figured out a way to, it's called including an MOA inhibitor, monoamine oxidase inhibitor. I think that's what the word is. So that allows DMT to be orally active when it typically isn't. And that's a mystery in and of itself, because if you ask Amazonian shamans how they came across how to do this, because it's crazy that they found a way to make DMT orally active these thousands of years ago, and they'll tell you that the plants told them. So there's whole rabbit holes to go down regarding this, and regarding why there are plants that we ingest that create visionary experiences and that alter our consciousness. Like, why would those things exist? Do they want to communicate with us? What are they? And there are so many theories regarding this. There's theories that all religions were started based upon these plants. There are theories that our evolution was sparked by this. Language was sparked by it. Tons of things. So it's all very, very mysterious and so much outside the boundaries of our typical experience that it's hard to relay through these mouth noises called language. It's very, very hard to articulate. And I'm usually pretty good with words, but I'm at a loss for words so much of the time regarding this stuff. So that's a little background on ayahuasca and DMT. And I'll tell you about my first ceremony, because each ceremony it would be a video in and of itself. It's just too much, and I learned so much. So my very first ceremony, drank it, and I laid down, and it kind of just felt like a meditation because I'd been doing so much meditation at that point, and I got used to those kind of light meditative states, or those light states of altered consciousness just through meditation. So I was like, okay, I know what this is. Like, I've experienced similar things before. And then I dipped into it a little bit more. I saw some ancestors of mine, more recent ancestors actually, family members that passed away during my lifetime and a little bit before. And they kind of surrounded me and made me feel safe in the experience, essentially. So who knows if that's just vision or that's actually happening? I don't know. It's just speculation. So I can't definitively say whether anything is just me making it up or it's actually happening. We can't even say this about this reality, so who knows? And then after that, it got to the point where it was much lighter of an experience than I thought it would be. So I posed the question in my mind, and the question was posed towards ayahuasca. I was like, why aren't you tearing me apart? Because I've heard stories about how intense ayahuasca experiences are and how it could be facing your deepest fears head on and things like that. So I was expecting to be scared out of my wits, or for something about me to be revealed that would shatter my identity or shadow some egoic delusions I was clinging to. So I was expecting that. So I posed the question, why aren't you tearing me apart now? And I immediately got an answer. And that answer was, because you're the best at doing that. And that just blew my mind. And it ties back to work I was doing on putting too much pressure on myself and things like that, being judgmental on myself, which reflects in judging external circumstances and judging other people too. So I was already aware of that aspect, but it was funny that that came up right then. Like, who would have expected that? Why aren't you tearing me apart? You're the best at doing that. So that was very interesting, but that was the extent of the hardcore ayahuasca experience in my first ceremony. It didn't get much trippier than that, but at the end of the ceremony, when the shaman ended it, or the shamans ended it, and people started to get up, people started to leave the room and things like that, then it really hit me like a tidal wave. I couldn't even get up off of my mat. And I just found myself like kind of half propping myself up, and I couldn't go any further. And I would just have to lay back down. And it got to the point where I realized there was no way I was getting up on my own. So I just had to reach my hand up and scream for help. And that was a moment of shattering my stubbornness and shattering a lot of egoic tendencies that I had, especially that stubborn mentality, that stubborn masculine mentality of I could do everything myself. I got this. Because that's how I got through a lot in life. I would just use my raw willpower to just power my way through circumstances. And I was pretty good at that, but there comes a point where you need to know when to ask for help, and it benefits you to ask for help because no man is an island, and we're all here to help each other. So I kind of had those revelations while I was making that decision to call for help, like, oh yeah, we're all connected. And I felt it too. There was a knowing. It's not just this intellectualization of we're all connected, we're all here to help each other. It was a deep knowing. And there's a big difference between merely intellectualizing something and truly knowing it. So I kind of had those insights as well. So when I asked for help, this guy who was a volunteer for the organization I was doing it with, just a beautiful soul, he came and helped me and talked to me a little bit. And then he led me to where the showers were that lined the room. So I got in the shower, handed my clothes over to him while he was on the other side, and then, washed myself off, and that helped smooth things over a little bit. And I think I did that twice. But I was in a state where everything was kind of scary, everything was moving around, shadows were dancing on the wall, so it was scary and almost like a bad trip. And I've never done acid or mushrooms before that. I've never had an experience like that before. But it was very, very trippy and scary, and it was bringing up anxiety and fear and things like that, and shapes were distorting a little bit. So I was not knowing what to do and trying to cling to something in this reality, because I wanted to anchor myself, to find some solace in something. And I was cycling through things in my head in order to cling to. And it got to the point where the only thing I had left was when the sun rises, because it was night. So I was like, okay, when the sun comes back up, then I'll know that the ceremony is over, because I wasn't even sure at this point if the ceremony ended or not. I thought I was in a time loop. I had no idea what was going on. No idea. I was so dazed and confused. So I got to the point where I was like, Okay, when the sun comes back up, then I'll know that the ceremony is over, and then I'll like, that'll be my thing to cling to anchor me in reality, whatever reality is. And I got another response from ayahuasca, which was, how do you know that's going to happen? And I realized that, like, that's not promised. Nothing is promised. So I had that wave of realization come over me after I got that response. And I completely let go of everything. There's nothing to cling to. I let go, I surrendered to the experience because I was desperately clinging on to something familiar. But that moment allowed me to fully let go for the first time in my life, actually. And after I did that, the experience kind of just slowly and slowly faded away, and I spent the rest of the night just relaxing more on my mat in the ceremony room, and I slept a little bit. So after I had that complete letting go moment, it was more smooth sailing out of the storm after that. And that was a big experience for me. Like, especially that part of fully letting go. Because most of us, we're so wrapped in our egos, possessed by our egos, essentially. And the ego tries to control and manipulate every situation in order to preserve itself, because the ego always thinks everything's the end of the world and it's trying to maintain its survival. And it's essentially an illusion, so it's trying to prop up that illusion at every corner. And we're trying to do this. This is why we try to control every situation. So to have that boundary dissolution where we completely release control is so revelatory. And it takes away all that effort, all that putting pressure on yourself, and all that anxiety and fear over trying to control things. And it's just, boundary dissolution and merging with what is and going with the flow. And that doesn't mean to never take action. It means to not attach to the outcomes you desire and not trying to constantly manipulate things. Because that's when you'll be governed by fear and anxiety. And that's no fun. So those are some big lessons. And it was way more of a physical experience, that first ceremony, than I thought it would be, which was surprising. But it was exactly what I needed. It shattered my egoic stubbornness. And it's continued. Like, I'm way more willing and able to ask for help. And also to help others and to view people as connected to me. Like, I always intellectualize that concept of we're all connected. But I truly felt it and experienced it then. And that has really changed my life. And I'm attracting people that help me in so many ways ever since then that I wasn't able to do before when I was just trying to stubbornly push my way through everything. If I had a problem, I would stubbornly push my way to solve it instead of asking for help. So that helped a lot. And then, basically completely letting go and surrender and not attaching to things and essentially accepting everything as it is. And again, that doesn't mean to be passive and to let things happen that aren't for your highest good, but it just means to drop that fearful egoic sense of attachment. And that has rubbed off in every other aspect of life too, being able to surrender. Whether it be sitting in traffic or going deeper into meditation or accepting someone else's actions and not judging them, or going into a float tank and be able to navigate my consciousness in a float tank that on a level that I couldn't have done before, to be able to surrender to that experience. It's a beautiful thing, and it's made life so much more enjoyable, so much less stressful. And I have fears, but fear, for the most part, does not control my life. And I choose to be courageous in the face of fear, and I'm able to transcend many fears. Of course, there's still some because we're in these human bodies and we have primal responses to things, but I don't let it dictate my reality. So I'm able to surrender, I'm able to let go. And I think that's about it regarding the first ceremony. And there were 4 others, so there's a lot to this. And I don't know if I'll make a video for each of them, but I'll probably make another video discussing this. So everyone's experience is completely different. That's what's awesome about this stuff. Like, it really points out that we're all individuals and that we all have these unique experiences. And I think pretty much everyone that has these kind of experiences, they've experienced something that's never been experienced before. It's like going into uncharted territory. So if you want to try this, like, do your due diligence, do your homework. If it's calling you, look into it. Choose a reputable place to do it. This is not something to just dive into. You have to treat it like a surgery. It's almost like a psychic surgery where you don't just go into a surgery haphazardly. You carefully assess your needs. If it needs to happen, you pick your doctor, whatnot. It's a process. So you have to go to a reputable place to do this because you're going to be vulnerable. You're going to be, vulnerable and in states that you're not used to and very fearful. So you want to be in a comfortable, safe, good setting to do this. And yeah. So I hope you got something out of this experience that I shared with you, because these principles apply everywhere. That letting go of stubbornness, that helping other people, the letting go in general and not clinging to things and not attaching to things and not letting your ego control the show. Those apply to every aspect in life, and you don't need ayahuasca or something else in order to realize it. But this could be a tool that you might use to help in the process. And it's definitely not mandatory. Like, you could reach similar states through other means. And there's different processes involved, but you can reach similar states by other means. So don't think you have to do this in order to get a desired outcome. If it calls you, look into it. If not, that's fine. And I hope you get something out of the insights that I just shared, because I've gotten a lot out of it. And I'm able to apply it on a daily basis. And this is a year later, and I still feel the changes because of it. And it's enhanced my life in many ways. So that's enough ranting for me. Peace, peace, much love, and one love, baby.